All good. All good. We can hear you.
Great. Okay, cool. So thank you so much. I'm actually super excited. That's literally the first sort of user group that I've done in literally ages now. It's like literally more than a year now. So I'm super excited to be here with you guys and talking mainly today about the Tableau Business Science. So my name is Nassim Chami. I'm actually based in Sydney, Australia. And I've been at Salesforce for the past 3 years now, and I've been doing analytics for the past 12 years. What we will be focusing on today, apologies, this is a forward-looking statement, just kind of like I'll say that throughout the presentation, we might actually talk about some aspects of a roadmap features that might be coming over the next couple of releases, Salesforce releases. So just be aware of that, and that's why I'll put that forward-looking statements. As I mentioned, this is kind of like thank you for attending these sort of sessions, and again, it's kind of like I would say how excited I am, and I'm pretty sure all my colleagues online are also super excited for this event. What we're going to be talking today is about Tableau Business Science, right? When we talk about business science, a lot of people kind of go and say, well, what is the business science? We know what data science is, so what is the business science? So in order to kind of like explain what business science is, we're going to kind of like briefly go through over the data science and also talk about the sort of challenges that we're having today with data science. So data science in theory today is basically a business critical application, right? It's the ability to go and build highly precise models that drives a sort of a critical business information, things like fraud detection, all that sort of stuff. And normally it's driven by data scientists or by technical expertise, right? So it does require a lot of sort of work in the background to be able to try and create these sort of predictions and help drive the business, the critical business outcomes. Now, the challenge that we've seen today, and this is actually from a Venture Beat 2019 sort of survey, is that 87% of the data science projects never make it into production. There's a lot of different reasons of variables for that not happening. One of them could be, the DevOps sort of process and how you go and implement that into production. It could be desperate systems. There's a lot of different variables. Now, what we'll be focusing on today is more the Tableau business science. So what is the business science? The same aspect behind data science, we also use ML, machine learning and AI component. And the whole idea now is we try to push or position this technology for the business users and as well as the analysts to be able to go and make these sort of smarter decisions way quicker and be guided by the ML. Now, the whole idea of Tableau business science is that it has to be done in a very simple and fast approach, right? Because it's more like, do quick, fail quicker, or learn quick, or fail quick, learn quicker. So the whole idea in here is how we can go and make it so easy and so quick that you can literally go through multiple iterations in order to get to what you're trying to achieve. The second aspect of having a business science is to be able also to trust that model. So not just to go and build a model and deploy it, but also to be able to go and have all the different sort of model metrics, model transparencies, model monitoring as well, to be able to go and understand that, okay, I can go and trust what that model, what that score is going to look like. And the last pillar of the business science is also has to be integrated, right? Because again, if we don't integrate that into our business process, then in theory we're going to end up similar to data science project, where the majority of those projects either take a longer time to be able to deploy into production, or eventually not make it into production. So these are the sort of three main pillars of behind business science. Now, if I want to kind of like visually describe that, think of it like this, right? On the left-hand side, data science is all about position first. So if you're like trying to go and find or identify a location, you're going to say, I want to look at my longitude and latitude. And this is pretty precise. So when you give that precise sort of point of sort of a position, then you know that you're going to go and get to that person. Business science, on the other hand, though, is not about precision. It's more about, I want something right now, and I want to give it, I want to be able to understand how I can go and get there in a very quick and quick fashion and get that context first. So in theory, if I go and say, well, where are you now? I can go and say, well, continue straight for the next 3 blocks. And then when you pass that bookstore on the left, I'm going to be there, right? So that's the kind of like the visualization. If I want to visually kind of like explain the difference between the data science and business science, that's how easily you can kind of like look at the sort of differences between these two. Now, again, so are we trying to go and say now that you don't need data science and you can go and do everything in business science? So the answer to that is pretty much no, right? Because there's not a one-size-fits-all sort of problem. You always have some complex problems that does require data science. You might also have some kind of like a little bit not that complex, pretty straightforward set of problems that might actually require business science. So there's really no right or wrong. There's really no go and use data science instead of business science or the other or vice versa. It literally depends on the use case and what are we trying to achieve at this stage in order to go and define what am I looking for. So a quick example, if I look at a data science, it could be things like, I want to be able to go and detect which of my customers are more fraudsters, right? Or go and give me, or show me the who of these customers I need to go and focus on, right? That you need position first. You can't go and say, oh, this is a fraudster, so we're going to go and take an action on this. You have to have that sort of position first. But if I look from a sales aspect, for example, if I'm going to go and predict, how long would it take me to close a deal, then in that use case, really it doesn't matter to have the precision. Because if I go and say, well, you can go and close it in 2 weeks, but you close it in 1 week or close it in 3 weeks, it's still fine. It's just giving you a little bit of a sort of contextual to go and tell you how long probably you would go and take to go and close that deal. But again, if you close it more than the prediction, it's really not going to be a big problem. So that kind of like explains the difference between business science and the data science, and how we can go and understand that depending on the use case, what should we go and use. So if we go and talk about Tableau Business Science, the technology that is empowering the Tableau data science is actually called Einstein Discovery. Okay, and Einstein Discovery is a platform that is built onto the Salesforce platform that leverage the ML capability to be able to go and build all these sort of use cases that I talked about earlier, and not just go and build the models, but also deploy that and productionize it in a sort of a quick simple manner, right? So the key features of Einstein Discovery in Tableau is pretty much three things, right? Number one, it is called no-code AI. So you do not write a single code of a line of code. And we'll see that in the demo shortly. The other thing is, you don't just go and build this sort of a model, and you don't go in and automatically get all these sort of visualizations and discovery out of it. You can also have access to all the model metrics to be able to monitor how accurate that model, and also when you deploy that model, you have live sort of monitoring to make sure that that model is being accurate over time. And the last bit, and this is the kind of key value as well, because it's built on the Salesforce platform, it's actually enable you to embed all these sort of predictions anywhere you want, whether we are talking about within the Salesforce aspect of it, or if I want to go and enable that or embed it into my Tableau dashboards like this. We're going to talk about that after the demos shortly. So what is Einstein Discovery? As I mentioned, Einstein Discovery is actually part of the Salesforce platform. It is it's actually allows you to feed any data into it, so you can go and get and combine data from anywhere, whether it is actually coming from your Salesforce instances or whether it's actually external from Salesforce. So it could be in your data warehouses or data lakes or any third-party applications or even flat files. What you do is you combine all the data from everywhere or anywhere, and then it automatically creates discovering insights, which is basically correlations, predictive analytics, diagnostic analytics, and preemptive analytics. And the whole idea here is you are not doing any code-based modeling. So you're not going to be writing any single code, any single line of code. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be asking business questions. Things like, how can I go and maximize my CSAT? Or how can I go and minimize my attrition level? Or how can I go and minimize time to close deals? So on and so forth. The other thing to note about Einstein Discovery is it's pretty straightforward and it's very easy, so you can do rapid iteration, right? It's a supervised machine learning. So when we say supervised machine learning, you have to go through a iteration process to come up to a point where you have a model that is more relevant to your business or to your use case and that is deployable and to the accuracy that you're looking for, right? So that the power of the discovery that it's pretty straightforward and it's very fast allows you to make that rapid iterations, rapid story creations. And the last bit, as I said, it comes also with the live model monitoring, so it allows you to go and monitor that model, how is it being done over time, and it's also gives you all the sort of metrics and dashboards that you need to be able to monitor these models. So as I said, the whole idea of data understand discovery is now how we can go and leverage that power of business science and enable and empower our business users as well as the analysts to be able to go and do sort of a decision making based on statistical analysis. So as I said, there's three sort of main pillars, and we're going to see that in the demo. The first one is it's guided and automated. So you don't need to write a line of code. You don't need to do any drag and drops. It's literally, what am I trying to achieve? What is my business problem? And you go and prepare the data for it, and then it goes and automatically creates these discovery widgets. The other bit, as I said, it's pretty quick. So you can go and do multiple iterations, and as well as you can go and deploy it in a matter of clicks. And that doesn't take like what normally you do in data science, where it might take like maybe on an average 2 weeks to deploy into a production environment. And the last bit is it's flexible and explainable. So at any point of time, you can go and have multiple models running at the same time. So I can go and say, you know what, I want to do a churn model, which is what we call a yes and no question. So with that customer churn model. And at the same time, I'm going to also do what's the likelihood of me closing this, or what's the time that's going to take me to close this opportunity, for example, right? So you can combine multiple models, it's pretty flexible, and it's also explainable. So every widget or every chart that's been created, it's got NLG in it, so it's got natural language generation that kind of like explain what am I looking at. And you're going to see all that in the demo shortly as well. Now, one component of AI, right? It's not just about predicting and guiding the end users, but also how can you go and make sure that it's being ethical, right? So again, another component of the understand discovery feature is you have the ability to not just monitor the models, but you also have all the sort of transparency, so you have access to all the metrics that is required for you to make sure that, we have the right results, we have the right metrics, is it optimized, are we picking the right algorithms, so on and so forth. So you will be guided by ethics, you'll have the visibility into all the results of the model, and as well as, because of the Salesforce platform and the trust requirements for them, because it's built on the Salesforce and it's native to Salesforce, security is pretty much the same as Salesforce platform, right? So all the sort of security is being maintained as well. So, enough for the slides. I'm not a big fan of slides personally. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into this sort of demo, and we're going to talk about the understand discovery component. So what you see here in front of me, this is our Tableau CRM Analytics Studio. So this is where the understand discovery basically lives, and this is where you go what you use in order to build these different models. Okay. Now remember, whenever we talk about discovery, we have to mention, that it is a supervised machine learning, so it's an iterative approach. And also, because it's supervised machine learning, you have to create what we call a data set to train the model, in this instance, to train Einstein, and to what sort of attributes or what sort of variables does it contribute to the business outcome that we're trying to achieve. Okay, so that's always a must for us to do. Now, when we do discovery, the sampling of that data set model that lives in the Salesforce doesn't really have to live in the Salesforce. We actually have capabilities to keep the data on source, as source application. At the stage of this release, actually, it's on Snowflake. So if you have some sample data or training set data that lives in Snowflake, you don't need to move that data into Salesforce or into Tableau CRM. But most of the time, you have to bring that data through and store it as what we call a data set. Now, that is just a sample data, right? So this is just the data that you need to go and train the model. Once you deploy the model, then that data is really not necessary anymore. So the first thing that we need to do is to showcase how we can bring in the data set, right? And in here within the Tableau TCRM, you can go and bring data sets from any sort of aspects, right? Whether it's a flat file, whether it's connecting to any of the Salesforce data. So if we're talking about standard objects, custom objects, external objects, you can bring all that information through. And also we have connectors. I'm going to click on that just quickly, show you some of those connectors. So you have connectors to pretty much the majority of the applications, right? And again, remember, we expose APIs. If you don't see any of these connectors in here, you can actually leverage APIs and bring the data through. So if I do the connected data here, you'll notice I've got all these different sort of connectors. So we're talking about Redshift, any of the Salesforce platforms, CRM Dynamics, SQL servers, SQL data warehouses, Oracles, AWS, Snowflake, so on and so forth. Right? There's a lot of connectors in here that allow us to bring the data. Now, what I'm going to do here is, in theory, we're going to go and say we've already brought the data, and my business case, or what I'm trying to achieve as a business data science, is I want to be able to predict the CSAT of my customers, right? So for that, I need to go and create a data set that historically capture all the CSATs across all my members, right? So I've created a data set in here, and you're going to see here, it's called CSAT history, right? So remember that data now, I brought it through to my TCRM, or the Tableau TCRM product. And in here, if I want to look at what this data set looks like, these are basically the dimensions. So you'll see here, I've captured different variables, different columns. So things like first contact, close, is this case escalated or not? This is, by the way, a shipping sort of a company. So we do a lot of delivery. So we capture things like, who's the carrier for that delivery? What was the priority? What was the product? What was the reason of the delay? If there was a delay, right? What's the shipping state that we're sending to? So on and so forth. And you look at the measures to also capture the CSAT, right? So in theory, if I want to look at what that data looks like, I'm just going to do a values table in here. And I'm just going to go and add all the values. So this is what that data looks like. It's pretty structured. Each of those data is a row, a historical row. It's going to tell you, what was the reason of this case. If this is a late delivery, what was the priority that I was given, what was the product type, the cost, so on and so forth. And there's a CSAT. Okay? So now how do I build a model? The idea in here is you go and click on that top button that says create story, right? And that is, this is the automated approach onto where, as I mentioned earlier, you do not need to write a single line of code, right? So all I need to do is to go and say, what is my business problem? So in this instance, my business problem is CSAT, right? So this is in the field here. What am I trying to do with the CSAT? You'll notice in here there's two functions. There's a maximize and a minimize function. So now in theory, I can go and say, well, I want to build a model that looks at that historical data and help me maximize my CSAT, right? You might build another model that goes and say, I want to try to minimize the cost per shipping, for example, so on and so forth. So I'm going to keep on the maximize CSAT. You can give the story name, then you go to the next step. Now into the next window, I understand in here is telling you, you gave me this data, what do you want me to do with this? The first option is insights only, which is basically just correlations. So it looks at all these different dimensions and all these different features of variables, and it goes and gives you correlation in regards to the outcome or to the business challenge that we're trying to achieve, which is predicting CSAT, right? Now, the second button is basically the conclude analysis. So in here, it actually gives you the insights only, which is just the correlations. Then it gives you predictions, so it'll tell you what the future will look like. It will also give you diagnostics, so it'll tell you what are the drivers behind those predictions, or what's leading that prediction score. And then the last bit is preemptive, which is basically based on the statistical measures, what sort of actions, based on the data points that I've provided, what sort of things can I go and do that can help me with the business outcome, which is in this instance to maximize my CSAT. Okay? So that's it. You pick what you want to do. Now, the last bit, we've created a data set with, let's say, 9 columns, right? So do I know what features and what variables are more highly correlated to the business outcome, which is the CSAT? If I do, then I can switch to the manual and you go to the data options and you pick these columns, right? Now, if I don't, we also have an automated way where Nassim can scan quickly all these columns that you provided with that data set, and he can pick pretty much what sort of attributes are highly correlated to the outcome, and then he will use those variables in the predictive, on the statistical analysis. Okay, and that's it. All I need to do is simply create a story, and you'll notice that in the background, it's going to go and start crunching the numbers and create the model for you. So a story basically is a interpretation of the model, of the code that Einstein is doing. And in theory, this is what business analysts or what business users will look into. I'm not going to waste a lot of time. Normally, it does take a little bit of time to build the story. You'll notice in here what it does, it actually evaluates all the graphs and drill downs, then does the statistical analysis, it detects the patterns, gives you any sort of improvement opportunities, and then generates the charts and explanations. All right? So I already have a story in here, and I'll show you that story in a second now. So let's go and open the CSAT. Okay? And that's what you will see. That is basically what a story is. Okay? Now, what I want to do with this, the first thing that you notice in here is you have a couple of options. On the left-hand side, you will have the ability where, as I said, because I picked the automated approach, so I asked Einstein, go and look at all these variables, and you go and tell me which of those I had created, rather than doing a manual approach. So you'll see here, Einstein is going to go and look at all these columns, and it's going to tell you which of those are highly correlated to my business outcome, which if you see on the top left corner, the business outcome or the business challenge that I'm trying to achieve here is I want to maximize my CSAT, right? And the second thing that you notice in here is on the top, you've got three buttons. Insights, which basically are all the correlations. It gives you all these sort of insights to create hypotheses to go in and kind of like understand what do you need to look at, what do I need to focus on. And the second button is predictions, which then would help you through getting you and tell me based on my hypothesis what the future looks like. I'm going to go through that. And the last bit in here, the last button is the model, which is basically, now let's go to the backhand. You know how we talked about earlier the ethics and the transparency and the metrics. This is where you go and access all this information. And most importantly then, you also have your recommendations. So Einstein looks at your data and goes and tell you if there's any sort of bias. So you might actually go and say, I've detected bias. You need to go and change the data set that is part of the story because it looks like it's biased. At any point of time, you can click on any of those and it will take you through the story. So in this instance, Einstein says, well, I found there's two dimensions or two measures in this instance. Estimated days to destination and days open, and I understand saying rather than keep them as individual sort of numbers, you need to go and create a buckets, and I've already created buckets for you. So now you have an option to go and say, I'm going to go with Einstein recommendations, or you might ignore it and you might do it yourself, right? And guess what? Because it's pretty quick, right? You can go and do multiple iterations. So you might go with the first iteration saying, I'm going to go follow what Einstein is saying, and then I'm going to do another version where I'm going to do my own buckets and compare both, okay? Now, the other thing is in here, of course, you can go and edit the story, and at any point of time, okay, you can go and choose the different algorithms. Now, this is very important, right? Today, with the Einstein Discovery release, we actually have only two sort of models that we normally do, right? Regression analysis, which is basically numeric use cases, things like revenue. So I want to go and predict revenue. I want to predict, cost. Profit, anything that has to do with numbers, any scores, propensity to close, for example, likelihood to upsell, anything that has to do with score, that is falls under the regression. And the second model is a single classification. So this is basically a binary outcome, a 0 and 1, a false or true, a high or low. So for example, an example of the binary, a single classification, is churn. Will this customer churn? The answer of that is yes or no, so we can go and back to this. So that's today, these are the only two models that we cover within Discovery. The other thing is, you'll notice you can pick within each of these models, you can pick what algorithms you can choose, right? So you have GLM, GDMs, XGBoost, Random Forest, and a model tournament, which is basically the model tournament is basically takes each of those algorithms and create a tournament to go and pick the one algorithms. So again, remember, you have the option to override any of those. Normally, Einstein is going to go and understand that use case that you have. He will pick the algorithm that he thinks is the best fit. But again, you can go and say, no, I'm going to go do another story. And this time I want to do an XG boost, for example. Okay, so you do have that option. At the same time, also on this bit, you also have the option to play with the data. So for example, if you remember when we talked about, estimated days to destination, how Einstein did buckets, you can go and say do nothing, and you can go and define your own buckets, right? So you can go and create your own sort of buckets. So you have the ability to do all that sort of stuff right from within here. Okay? So I'm going to close this one, leave. Now, the other thing that we're noticing here, let's go on to the backend of it first. So before we start the analysis, let's see what the backend of it is, right? Where we talked about the ethical AI. So this is if I switch out the model. This is basically where now I can quickly look at the accuracy of the model, right? Look at all the variables that we've used in this data set. Look at also what Einstein picks. You notice in here, Einstein, he defined this as a regression model, because in here I am doing CSAT, which is a numeric use case, and the algorithm that he picked was GLM, right? At any point of time, I can actually click on the view code, and this is the code. So now imagine in theory, if I don't have a story, then Einstein's going to spit that. For you, as a business analyst, you might not really understand what that is, right? Maybe if you're a data scientist, then definitely you're going to understand that model, okay? So what we've done is we've translated this code into a story for you to be able to go and analyze. The other thing that you notice in here is at any point of time, I can go to the model evaluation, and now these are all the metrics that I need, right? So all the cross-validations, all the coefficients. Whenever anyone asks about all that sort of stuff, just from a transparency and an ethical aspect of things, we actually have access to those. And the last bit that you do in the model is prediction examination, right? So what we've done is we've created a historical data set, and we said to Einstein, go and learn from that historical data set and give me a prediction. So what Einstein does in here, it goes and says, well, this is, the first column is the predicted column, but you already have that CSAT in here. So you already, that's a historical data set, right? So basically it's going to go and say, well, the actual was 73, which is the CSAT in here, but we've predicted, the predicted outcome was 76.73. Now that kind of like shows, tells you the sort of accuracy of that model. And again, in this use case, I'm okay with it. Like if it's a CSAT and, I'm like, there's a 30% of an accuracy, I might be fine with this model. If it's a FOB use case, for example, then this is something that we do not do because we need it to be more precise, and that's where you go and think about data science rather than business science. Okay? Now you notice that whenever I click on any of those rows, right, each of those will kind of like go and tell you what was the actual outcome, what was the predicted outcome, what were the top factors that were driving this our prediction. So we'll see that, estimated base destination and product description, right, was driving those, was driving the top factors for our prediction, but the type of support was actually the negative factor, right? So that's just for you as an analyst to understand what variables or what features are contributing to the outcome that I'm trying to achieve, which is CSAT. Now the last bit that we need to do is we need to analyze. So the model basically will give you access to all the metrics that you need, give you a little bit of confidence about, the model that Einstein built, and also understand what model type is and what the algorithm is. And as I showed you, you can go and edit and modify all that information. Now let's start with our analysis. Our analysis is pretty straightforward. I click on the insights. The whole point of insights in here is to try to understand, try to define these, what we call the golden nuggets, or what we need to focus on, or the hypothesis that I need to go and test. So quickly here, you'll notice you have all these sort of charts. Einstein builds those for you automatically. And next to each of those charts, you've got the NLG, you've got the natural language generation, right? And saying the problem here, I asked Einstein, how can I go and maximize my CSAT? So Einstein said, well, CSAT is highly correlated with priority, right? These are the cases where the priority did way better than the average. So you notice me, this is my average. So it looks like high and critical priority did normally better in CSAT. So you have an average of CSAT 74, where the average CSAT is 68.46. And the bottom ones that are bad are low and medium, right? So low and medium are doing the worst. So then you can do your analysis. You might go and say, well, let me go and focus on low. So now the next bit is to look at the next dimension. So priority is low. Now I'm looking at the origin, and I can go and see community and mobile devices are doing worse. The other thing that I can go and see is whenever there is a new problem, that's also doing way worse. So if you look at, when I hover to a new problem, if you look at the chart, it's going to highlight where that problem is, right? So if I click on new problem, you'll notice now it's giving me a 63 average, whereas normally, if it's not a low priority, it's at 71. So you'll notice that big gap in here. And this is again an insight that you might have missed when you're doing the analysis, and honestly, I kind of find that out for you. So now I go and say, well, if the reason is a new problem and the priority is low, right, and the origin is community, it looks like it's going to have a very low CSAT. So let's go and test that, right? I'm going to switch now to predictions, and I'm going to go with the what if analysis. I'm going to say, well, Einstein said whenever the priority is low, whenever the origin is community, right, and the reason is new problem, then the C set is going to be a low C set. So you notice in here it's a low C set, 61.54, which is below the average, which was 63, right? Now in here you have the options. We might go on also with another hypothesis. I can go back to my insights in here, and again I can go and say I want to look at my low, I want to look at my community, and I want to look at where was it? You can actually even do things like this. I can go and compare that to other stuff. I can go back to my origin. Sorry, I clicked too quick. I'm going to go low. And in here, I'm going to look at the new problem. Okay. And I'm going to see if they have any sort of information that goes with a first contact or that actually goes, with estimates. So you've got all that information and you can go and explore at any point in time. Okay. Now we're going to go back to my prediction. And again, if I go and do this again, so if I do low, community, reason is a new problem, I might even go and say, well, for one of those line hole carriers, you'll see this guy here has a CSAT of 66.94, but if I do another one, which is called resolutions, right, it might actually drop a little bit less, right? So you've got all that sort of amount of options. Now, how do I maximize that? So now I can go and say to Einstein, well, if I can control, if I can change priority, can you go and tell me what priority should I go and choose? Now look at this, and this is pretty interesting. So Einstein is saying, if you actually change priority to high, then you can increase that by 11 dots, right? Rather than critical by 10 dots. In theory, you might go and say, well, yeah, go and put everything into critical. Not in this instance, because in this instance, it only looks like it. For this use case, which is a low community problem, for that whole carrier, then just assigning it to a high priority, it's going to help you increase that C7. And you can go and do that right in here. So if I go now put high, you'll notice how it's going to go now 11 dots to 78.88. And then again, it's going to go and tell you all these sort of positive factors and the negative factors, and kind of like explain to you in a waterfall chart, this is where we started. And because of all these sort of actions that we've taken now, so for example, when we put that high, priority is high, you'll see how that pushed the score up. And now this is where the predicted outcome is. So it's better than the sort of average baseline. Okay? So that's now the power of being able to not just build the model, but also analyze all that data in a very easy sort of result-driven and wealth analysis rather than having to add a single point of code. Now the last bit that you do, if you're happy with this model and you want to say, you know what, that does make sense now. Now the last bit is to go and deploy it. So you're going to deploy that model. And you notice in here, you can go and give it any name. I can add it to an object. This is where you can go and connect it to your Salesforce instance. Or in our instance, I might even go and say, I don't want to connect it to Salesforce object. I want to go and embed it into a Tableau, right? And basically go through a set of wizards in here where you go and decide what are the variables. So basically here, it's saying which variables you can go and control to enable improvement. So for example, I can't maybe change the estimated dates to destination, but I can change priority and I can change, for example, maybe the line hole area, right? Even to be honest, in this instance, I can only change priority. So you go and select which of those variables are the actionable variables that we can go and take actions on. And that's it. You go and review, and then eventually you go and deploy. And that's how easy it is to go and build a model and deploy it. Now, where do we see the sort of basically application of that? So I'm going to go back now to my slide deck. So once we deploy a model, then you can add that model into your Tableau dashboard, right? This is not working a little bit. Let's go back here. I'm not sure right now. Sorry. Just takes a little bit of time. Escape that quickly. There you go. So now, when you go and add it into your Viz, you can now select the outputs or the input. Click on that widget, which is an extension into Tableau, and you will automatically get your score, the leading causes which you guys see when I did my analysis, and also the improvements. So how we can go and improve that sort of stuff, right? You can also do things like, what's the next slide in here? Which is basically the ability to do what if analysis. Again, if I go and present that bit here. So now you can embed that prediction simulator where now you can do the what if analysis in your Tableau instances, in your Tableau dashboards. So you can go and say, well, if I pick, this application or this status, what is the predicted income? Again, that is an aspect of where you can go and deploy. Once that model is deployed, that's another sort of use case that can go and use it into my Tableau instance. And the last bit is to also embed it into your data prep. So you'll notice in here there is a predictor or a predict node that allows you to go and run all that model and create the prediction score across all the different rows and then store it as a data set in Tableau to go and visualize it and build it. So these are the different sort of 3 different ways for you to go and deploy a model and add it onto your dashboard, onto your Tableau visualizations and dashboards and worksheets. Now I'm going to pause in here, and I don't know if there's any Q&A or I don't know if you guys want to do that, but definitely if there's any sort of questions, please feel free to ask those questions, or even if you want to use the chat box as well.
Okay, thank you, Nassim. Yes, we have one question that came through the chat, so we can start with that and then ask the question. So there's one person there, I think Wendy Small asks, does the user need to understand these models in order to give more integrity to the result? Yeah, that's the thing.
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question properly. Is it on the chat?
Oh yeah, it is on the chat. So it's does the user need to understand these models, so the models that you are creating, in order to give integrity to the results, or does Einstein kind of help you with that as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So remember, you do not really need to interpret the model. Everything that you need to give you that transparency and as well as the metrics are actually exist in the model, right? And sorry, in that model tab. So for example, if I go to model evaluation, right, you notice there's an R2. Now, as an analyst, you don't really even know what R2 is, but if I hover over it, it goes and tell you that R2 measures that regression model that we just built in here, and it goes and tell you how good is that model. So basically, this is the measure that we use to go and say, is this an accurate model or not? And R2 is commonly used in a metric for the right use case, and normally, the higher the R2, the better the model. So in this instance, it's a 0.30, it's basically 31%, and I can go and see if I want it. So in theory, this model that I've deployed now has only a 31% accuracy. Then you've got the prediction examiner, which kind of like showcase that, right? So in here, for example, you'll see it's not an accurate. It's got an accuracy in here, right? So 73, it got 76, 87, it was 77, right? So you'll see all these sort of different sort of results from the predicted versus the actual, and that's what that R2 is all about. So definitely, you don't need to understand what these models are. You just go and run these models as an iterations, and then every model you go and compare, and you go and understand which model is the best for your business. Does that answer the question, Wendy?
I think it does, yes. And yeah, well, we can go to questions in the room now as well. And if anybody else in the chat has questions, that's all right, just drop in the chat, and then we can get to them later in the room.
With this new form, is it going to be new requires
Sorry, it was very hard for me to hear the question.
It was about the license. Do you require a new license, or does it come with Tableau?
Yeah, so this is actually a new license. It's an add-on to the Tableau. It's called Tableau Business Science, which basically will give you access to the models. And here, for example, it gives you access to the Tableau CRM and also the ability to go and build models and deploy the model. That's definitely an add-on to the Tableau license.
Anybody else? Alex has a question.
So you said in the beginning that it's sort of the business science part is for the, let's say, the direction rather than the accurate figure. But how would you determine if the use case is something that you would give to data science or to something like Einstein? Because you would argue that, well, yes, I can predict my churn in the direction is how likely somebody is to churn, but obviously you want to know it as accurately as possible anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, there is a list of, let me see if I've got this slide here. So there's a list of where we normally look at the best sort of use cases for business sides. For example, this is just an example, right? So in sales, you've got lead conversions, win probability, time to close. In theory, there's really it's not like a black and white. It's kind of like a gray area, right? So if you go to the business, you're going to say, as a business, right? How really important for me to go and take, because remember, data science requires a lot of technical knowledge. There's a lot of work running in the background to go and define all the different features and models and all that stuff. So it does require a lot of time. So the question would be is, for the churn, so if I say I want to go and define my churn, right, or try to predict churn, is it okay to do it a very quick, I don't want to say quick and dirty, but more quick sort of approach that gives you something right now and productionize it? But again, you might have a little bit of less more from the accuracy aspect. Or do you actually want to go and do the proper sort of bit? However, you might have a challenge of taking a little bit more time and not even making it to production. So it's more of a question of the business, what am I trying to achieve? What I've seen in my customers, these use cases, that's why I put these sort of use cases, they tend to go and use these use cases as business science, and then they let the data science focus more on the maturity, on the complex things like behavior analysis, things like fraud detection, things like give me a market basket analysis, which of those products should I want to position to, right? That means so. Again, there's really no black or white in here. It's more of a, depending on the use case and depending on what the business is trying to achieve.
Thank you.
Is there any fiction models for things like HR, pension fund protection, and also is there a roadmap aspect? And also, currently, they can really do very much sort of language numbers to your content. Is there any sort of roadmap for natural language and processing?
Yeah. So again, sorry, apologies, I didn't hear the question pretty clearly, but I'm assuming we're talking about roadmap, right? The roadmap.
It was specifically for HR purposes like retention. If you can use something like that already, if you can't, if it's on the roadmap, and if there is natural language processing features.
Yeah. So we are adding a couple of natural language applications like sentiment analysis, for example, into the platform, into the on-site discovery. And at this stage, actually, we do have a different SKU, which is on the Salesforce instance. I'm just going to show you this bit in here, right? So you'll notice so what we talked about is this bit, right? This is the on-site discovery. So at the moment, it has to be structured. It has to be in a structured format that you need to go and fit into discovery. Today, we also have different products within the Salesforce instances that allow you to have that sort of NLG, right? Or the natural language, right? Which is kind of like understand language, which normally we use around the intent and sentiment, that could also be pushed, then even fed into discovery. So that's something that we already have today. But when we're building as a roadmap, we're building some of those features into the discovery. Okay. Now, the other bit, I think, on the roadmap as well is on the algorithms, if I'm not mistaken, that was the question. So what we're adding now, and that's actually coming in the summer release. So remember, within Salesforce, we have 3 releases every year. So the summer release is probably sometime next month. We are adding a multi-classification model. So now you can do binary or single classification. You can do numeric use case, and we're going to add the multi-classification. So you can kind of like start doing like some sort of a market basket analysis. And also we're adding on the roadmap something called BYOM, which means bring your own model, right? So if you want to go and leverage discovery as a distribution engine, so you have your own model, and you don't want to wait for the sort of DevOps to go and put into production. You want to leverage the Salesforce platform power to be able to distribute that into production. That's something that we're also working on as a roadmap. Again, remember, these are roadmap features, huh? Does that make sense? Right.
Any questions? So thank you very much, Nassim.
So here we go. So a little about me. I was in New Zealand from 2004 to 2012. I heard about Tableau in 2010 when I was sharing a file in Wellington. With a quick few admin at the time. A quick poll of the crowd. Who here are dual citizens? 4. All right. So I became a dual citizen in 2010. Just in case of, I don't know, a pandemic. So my sailing journey began in Wellington in 2007, and then I sailed away from New Zealand in 2012. Thanks to sailing. And I started sailing. The bottom little plug there is for sailability. So I learned through Sailability Wellington, and I've been volunteering here with Sailability Auckland whenever I have something on. So if anybody wants to join, come along. We take people with disabilities out sailing. It's really important. So after 2012, I left New Zealand, left because of sailing. So I crossed the Atlantic twice in 2012, and a good way for me to remember it is I was on the land for 13 weeks in 2012. And I worked in Tableau support after that for 3 years, from 2015 to 2018. And then afterwards, I did some consulting, doing Tableau. I did some Tableau training, and of course, I did more sailing. I crossed the Gulf of Mexico that year. So then I came back to New Zealand a few times. This is my 3rd time back since leaving Tableau, and yeah, came back for the America stuff. That was always going to happen, and also doing some consulting here. I'm with FIRN Analytics now, and yeah, since March. So Tableau's origin story. Anybody know Stanford's relationship with Tableau? Just to show of hands. Tableau guy in the back's not raising his hand. Okay. So it all started as a research project at Stanford. There was a guy there who was a professor, and he was also the chief something at Pixar doing graphics. And he wanted to mix graphics and data. He put it up to the class, and one of the students ran with it, and that was Chris Stolte, who became Tableau. It's been a little bit, but yeah, that's how Stanford and Pixar kind of combined the experiences to make Tableau. And it's all about mixing data and graphics. And the key of Tableau is, or the slogan is helping people see and understand their data. So a little slide for some humor, and I just noticed my the black on blue isn't going to show up very well. But, so yeah, this is a bug or a feature. It's a joke. Bug, yeah. So a question that often gets asked about Tableau support is: do bigger companies like Fonterra or ASP or 3M get better, faster service? Not necessarily. We don't look at the company size when we're looking at a case. We just look at the topic, dig in, and then we get the customer call. You can pay for faster service. There's a premium support option. Talk to your sales area manager for that. And after the Salesforce takeover, I can't speak to any certainty as I left. Actually, I left 14 months ago, April 2018. So, and speaking of that, this entire presentation is from my knowledge from when I left in April 2018. Some things could have changed. So there's generally 5 priorities in Tableau. Everybody wants to be priority 1, but there's only one real true priority 1, and that's when the challenge does not work. It's reserved for desktop if there's licensing issues, or server if your server's down. Tableau's going to try their best to get it back up for you. Then there's 3 world regions that will hand you over in case it's needed and you're working after hours and really need help. They'll pass it through those 3 areas. Priority 2, urgent issues on Tableau desktop and server, errors, indicators, etc. And Tableau, priority 3 to 5 for the rest. How to look right, answer requests. I wish Tableau did this stuff. So tier 1, that's the Tableau support specialist. They will handle about 50% of the cases that come in. They try to triage it and get you very quickly an answer. And tier 2, that's the Tableau or the technical support engineer. The goal on the timing for them is reach out to you every other day. That's what the time out there. But between the 2 stages, that's where there could be. Oh, by the way, show of hands. Who here is submitted a Tableau support? One person. I'm the leader who doesn't sounds like I'm the leader on the side. No, good. They are very knowledgeable. Very good use of
Yes. I recently talked to a colleague about opening up the XML file of Tableau. We can do some things in the background there. But yeah, log files, they're crucial. I'll get to log files a little later because they're really essential to submitting if you got some kind of area like that. So one cool thing at the bottom there.
Yeah, one second.
Apologies.
And we are nearly back. Now we're back.
Now we're probably back.
So one really cool thing about Tier 2, it's the last people they'll talk to, but also they can talk to teammates, they can use test servers, test out whatever version you're on, they can talk to technical leads, and they can talk to the developers. The developer part, I think there's a slide later on. Some bugs, aka unexpected behaviors or an issue. Something that used to work but doesn't now, or it's never been tried by anybody. And hasn't been tried by anybody and didn't work, and now, hey, there's this thing, it's not working. Features that might be on the roadmap, maybe it's on purpose, like text tables not behaving exactly like it could be both. So yeah, there's no shame in asking the question. Feel free to reach out to them there.
Try it again.
Yeah. Cool. So when bugs get resolved? So new releases, that's when they usually get resolved. And if there is, if you had an issue ID issue 2, you can go and find that issue ID in the release notes. Oops. There. Press that button. So you can see your specific issue ID. So let's see. Let's talk about it a little later. I'll just skip over. But if you have an issue with Tableau, it's doing something you're not expecting. It'll go into the developer. So tier 2 will put it through as a bug or they'll put it through to the developers, say, hey, is this expected? They'll ask the questions to the customer related to developers. And from there, they fix code and might change the thing, and that'll be in the new release. In the meantime, there is a dev build. It's really critical, and you can't use Tableau in the way it's intended before it's resolved. They might send you a dev build, which is pretty rare. But it's a way that Tableau can come to the rescue. It's basically a mini release that solves your specific issue. It's not supposed to be used in production. All right, so release types. So there's the annual release, which is 2021. There's the major releases, which is the one in the 2021.1.2. And there's the minor release, which is the 2021.1.2. So annual releases, of course, once a year. The major release is about once a quarter, and the minor release is about 3 to 5 weeks historically. The official line is something akin to past performance does not guarantee your future results. But yeah, looking past, but that's kind of how it works. If you want to find a specific release, so if your company is on Tableau 10.3, you can go and find it and download it. It is available. You can Google Tableau releases and you'll find it. A good rule of thumb: try not to use an xx.o. So it's goes for most software in general. But there's a beta testing period that goes before that. But then in that first release, a whole bunch of new customers are using it. A whole bunch of them are cases and finding the thing. Yeah. this one. The knowledge base articles and online help articles. Who here has used a knowledge base article? All right, at least half the room. So they often start as a Tableau support case. So somebody contacts Tableau and says, hey, how do I do this? Or why is it doing this? And there might be a workaround or there might be a how-to, and we'll write it up for an internal documentation system, and then it gets published up to Tableau if enough customers are linked to that internal article. So it's pretty cool. The more cases that are linked, the more it gets on the facility action. Enhancement request. That's the over to the left. You can see it. So enhancement request, the more cases get linked to that enhancement request in the internal article, the more it's going to get on the radar of the developers. But also, you can submit a Tableau community, and that often is more impactful. So there's more impacts, or yeah, you can share it to other people in the organization. You can share it on the forums, say, hey, I've got this cool idea. So there's been some cool ideas that have come about because of customers. Yeah, I already talked about which one's best. Tableau community. Yeah, other benefits. There's community board workarounds. Tableau is not going to tell you about some of the workarounds, but the Tableau community can. But when there's a will, there's often a way, especially with Tableau Jedi involved, and they often get Zen masters and all that. They often get on and help people on the forums. And there's also developers. You'll never talk to a developer. Well, I've had one customer be able to talk to it. No, but all I know. Best practices for submitting a support case. So if you do some of these, you'll help support get on or hit the ground running. So if you provide screenshots, a picture's worth 1,000 words, as they say. Log files, like Ludo mentioned. If you encounter an error, just include the log file. Like, go get it. And it's easy to Google get the log file. And it's basically in the logs. It's essential. And you'll be here to the folks in support. So a Tableau package workbook, that can really help them. Your data might be sensitive. You might need to some dummy data for them, but they'll really figure that for you. And the steps to reproduce the behavior are also pretty important. Other good things to include was the behavior encountered in the prior version. This is new, and I really want to know that. Tableau server versus Tableau desktop on the server machine. There's cases where Tableau server encounters an issue, but Tableau desktop doesn't. It's something great to know, and it'll help save the troubleshooting stuff later on, which would be an email or it might be on your side and your side. And is the issue encountered in one upload? Good or bad times to submit a case. That's the header over to the left. Bad times, major releases, especially .0. After, if you get an email about a new and amazing version, maybe if you had a case to submit, just submit it and you can answer it when you can. After a Tableau conference is bad, there's tons of amazing interactions at Tableau conference, and one of them is Tableau Doctor. Has anybody who's been to a Tableau conference? Yeah, right. Virtually. Anybody been to a Tableau Doctor session? No. I was part of Tableau Doctor for 2 years, and it was really cool. We got to have customers come in, give them like quick solutions, and if we don't have a quick solution for them, we submit a case, and it gets answered by somebody later. That's why it's a bad time to submit for Tableau conference. Major holidays, and they can be good. They can be hit or miss, because a lot of people don't think holidays at Tableau, but it's not like in New Zealand. We have to work for the holidays, unfortunately. Or you can see it as you don't have to take too much holidays. When you really, so this is escalations. If you really need your case looked at ASAP, and not just sit in the queue, there's a process for that. Contact your sales area manager. and they can help you out. And there's some good things to include, like number of users impacted, how long it's been causing an issue, and if there's a security vulnerability. If you ever see a security vulnerability, include that center off title. Self-service, Google. Most of the time you can find something by Googling, but there's a good Tableau support department just in case that doesn't work for you. And there's also the Tableau community. They have a lot of benefits. Your question or issue may have already been raised. So you can find it on there. And sometimes there aren't answers, and somebody's going to say, "Hey, this is how you do that," or they'll link you to another link that you can find, and they might have interesting info. Most common cases. A great question that came in while I was preparing for this. Ideally, a common case won't be common for long. So there's an error. That error is going to go away, hopefully. The how-to, it could get published in an article, and somebody will Google and find it instead of submitting a case. And an enhancement request will get implemented in the future release. So developers and customers, yeah, okay, I guess I had a customer talk to a developer twice. And they're basically rock stars at Tableau conference. They have different shirts. In Vegas, they have like a one-arm bandit kind of shirt with the gold black on it. Yeah, people really enjoy talking to them. It's crazy, considering how much a developer doesn't want to be customer facing and talk to people. They get put on the spot at Tableau conference, but you can tell they really enjoy it, and it's like that's the only time they have to talk to a customer. I'm pretty happy with that. Where they get to be the rock star. So my role in Tableau, I was a tier 2 support. I did desktop server and then lastly online. And I was the first new support Austin to join the office. So I got a nice window seat. I took over 50 workmates out sailing, and was generally tech support for everybody. And also this other guy that we talked about the new stuff about Tableau Online. And also did I mention the same? So yes, that's the end. I hope you guys learned all those good things, and yeah, time for some Q&A. Reach out if you have any data questions or scaling questions. Any questions?
Any questions?
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of new to Tableau, but what's the conversion rate for suggestions to report?
I have no idea, honestly. The question, by the way, was what's the conversion rate for suggestions on the forum? No idea. But there's a decent amount. I guess I'd say it's at least 10-20%. Over time, it could be higher than that. Yeah, I've seen a bunch of. I'll Google for something. Oh, is this possible in Tableau? Post, somebody asked a question, and then it's resolved. A developer said, "Yeah, this is available in this version now."
About the ideas now?
Yes, this is the ideas / enhancement requests.
There's all very training track. Every idea.
There's a whole there's a page on the website where you can track all the ideas that are submitted. Hopefully they're not. Status that it's in, right? You can track all the ideas there. I also have a question. You mentioned that there are 3 regions somewhere early in the presentation. Does that mean there are 3 offices, or are there lots of offices in those regions?
Good question. Yeah, there are 3 regions, and there's multiple offices in the regions. The UK, well, no, it's not really the UK, it's Dublin has a support office. And I forgot if there's another one in Europe, but there are multiple support offices in APAC. There's one in Japan, there's one in Sydney. And then, I'm not sure. I know there's an office there. Is there support in Singapore? There is support in Singapore. There's also in the States, or North America, there's one in Seattle, of course. And there's one in Austin. Maybe one in Seattle. No, there's an office in DC though. There are multiple offices that don't have departments. Yeah, the DC office is pretty big, so see how we get this point.
Can we get dotted lines that are not a workaround?
How do you get it higher? You tell people like us. We can go to them. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good idea, and keep uploading it. Share it around. That's a really good one. Any other questions?
I'm just curious about the workings of the office itself. So, in your office where you work, there was Boston. Yeah. How many people were talking about? 10.
We started with 6, and we were all in the same mass interview, and we like at the same time of day too. So it was a pretty cool thing where we all like, and there were probably, I'd guess, 50 people interviewed that day. But then we got to, when I left, we had 40 people in just the tech support, and then we also had the technical account managers, which look after the premium accounts. And there were a good 15 of them. And then there were product consultants that were and then there's also sales on another. Anybody else? All right, thank you guys.
Cool. Thank you, James. I have one more comment on the ideas question there. So there's this feature that was released, I think, 2 years ago, which is parameter actions, which was a feature requested for years and had thousands of upvotes. They announced it at the conference, and sort of the reason why it took so long, they said, was that they understood the need for it, but they needed to figure out the technical way to implement it that fits with everything else. And for a lot of the ideas that they get, that's what a user, like, that's the immediate thing the user wants to do. But what they try to do is they try to figure out a more fundamental process of implementing that feature. That's not like, oh, here's this one feature that does exactly that, but more, here's a tool that allows you to do this one thing, but also these 5 other things. So it's really, yeah, there are ideas that are there for years, and everybody cheers when they're finally implemented, but when they're implemented properly. And then others are just like, yeah, the easy ones are probably ticked off fast. So a bit of context on that. Very good. Thanks for that. So Tabata already teased a bit of a highlight. So what we're gonna do is we will run a Kahoot quiz. So if you all want to take out your phones, if you don't have mobile data, there's a guest network ID on the blackboard here. If you're online, feel free to join us. We will have books to give away and a special prize to give away, which I will not announce yet. So let me start let me find that first. There it is. Okay. I would ask you to use your name, your real name, or at least something that is close to your real name that we can identify you. Otherwise, it'll be hard for me afterwards to give out prizes. So if you go to kahoot.it, or use the Kahoot app, and then you can use the PIN that is on the screen, 4936750. We currently have, I think it's roughly 4 participants online and around 15 to 20 here. So I'll wait a bit until we have a bunch of people. Also, if anybody overseas happen to win a book, we'll be able to ship them. Okay, so we are at 14 now. We'll wait a few seconds longer and see if somebody else is gonna join as well. It doesn't look like it. Ah, there's Yudai. Oh, Nicholas. I'm not sure you are eligible for all of the prizes. So employees of Tableau might be excluded from winning anything. But feel free to join anyway. Okay, I think that's about it. I'm gonna start it. So you know the deal. Hopefully, the question will appear on the screen, I think, and on your phone. You have 20 seconds to answer the question. The faster you answer the question correctly, the more points you get. So we start with the first question. In a few seconds. Which of these is not a Tableau certification option? Good. 8 people correct. And Ludo is leading. Very good. Which of these functions does not have a dedicated button in the Tableau desktop toolbar? That's the bar on top of the Tableau screen. Oh, actually, a bunch of people got that right. Very nice. So we have a bunch of quite technical questions in the beginning, and then there's a bit more trivia towards the end. So don't be too disappointed. So Ludo is still leading. If you want to replace one field with another without breaking your worksheet, which option do you choose? And again, a bunch of people got that right. Very nice. And Ludo is still leading. Lauren, a very close second. And Babish. Is Babish here or not? Ah, Babish is here. We go to the next question, question 4 of 10. What happens if I drag a second measure on an existing axis? So you can see that picture there. I think Lauren got it wrong. That's okay. Oh, only 4 people got it right. So that was my idea with that question, that the first and the third answer. And Ludo, oh, see, you're still second place, Lauren. So. And Owen is following up. You can use your Tableau license on 2 devices at the same time. Is that true or false? Very good. Most people are correct at the moment. And still no change. Ludo, Lauren, and then Owen. Babish, you have to hurry up. Question 6. Which of these Tableau offerings is made up by us? Pretty sure Owen will know that. Well, it doesn't exist. I don't think there will ever be a Tableau offering that has the name Power in it. But yeah. And Ludo is still Ludo is building up his lead, but Owen is following up. So we have another 3 questions, I think. Where's Tableau's headquarters? If you listen to James, you should know that. And 12 people got that right. And it looks like the leaderboard is pretty static here. Question 8, how many virtual user groups did we organize last year? I think all of you should know that. You were all joining all of them, didn't you? That's very equally distributed, I would say. Very good. Oh, and Lauren is back on second place. 2 more questions. What is not a Tableau licensing role? Very good. 10 people got that right. Consumer is made up by us. And the last question, and I think we have a winner here already. Will you join us for the next user group as well? Very good. Everybody got that one right. Okay, so we have a winner. Oh, sorry, we have a 3rd place. That's James. Well, as a former employee of Tableau, you would hope. So this is in the top 3. Lauren, and then who might that be? Very good, Ludo. So we have, I said 2 prizes. We have a book, which I give Ludo the choice of 1 of 3. And we have an e-learning voucher. So that's for the Tableau e-learning platform, which is valued at 120 US for a year-long subscription. Now, what we're gonna do is, because Lauren, I'm sure you would like it. But our thinking there was, well, if you get most of the answers right, you probably don't have a need for an e-learning voucher. So what we're going to do is we give it to the person who answered all the questions but got the least points. So let me try to figure that out and retrieve the information. Final score, unanswered. Uday, is he here? No, he's online. Uday, are you online? Very good.
Yeah, he said something there.
Yes, very good. So what I'll do is I'll get in touch with you afterwards, and I send you the voucher for the e-learning. So that you can scale up a little bit, and next time you can win the one and win some books as well.
Thanks.
Very good. Cool. That's it from us. Oh no, sorry. I have a few more things just to tell everybody. Yeah. So you might have heard there was a Tableau Live event last Tuesday, which was an online event usually around that time of the year, Tableau runs a live event in Sydney. That's not happening for obvious reasons. So that was, I think, 4 or 5 hours, had a bunch of roundtable sessions at the end. I'll send the links through afterwards anyway, so no need to type it or take a picture or anything. Bunch of sessions around business science and Einstein as well, similar to what you heard today. A lot of the stuff at the moment that Tableau does is around community building and adoption within a company. So it's nice to have licenses, but it's nicer if all your people actually work with that, know how to work with that, and can support each other. So it's definitely worth checking out the recordings of the sessions. If you're new to Tableau and you don't really know where to get started, there are virtual Tableau desk drives happening every 1 or 2 weeks. It's Australian time zone, so usually I think they are from 12 to 2 p.m. So that's quite friendly. And they're super useful if you just get started and need some free training. And lastly, Tableau launched the Data Leadership Collaborative, I think a week or 2 ago, which is an online platform where they have a bunch of like community leaders and leaders within companies. They are a few employees of Tableau, former employees of Tableau. There is like big names in the sort of the Tableau community. If you do Makeover Mondays, you might know Eva Murray, you might know Andy Cotgrave. Ben Jones used to be an evangelist at Tableau. He now runs his own company, Data Literacy LLC or something. So they have a bunch of sort of articles around building communities. They also do brain dates, which is online sessions for up to 6 people, I think, on the 26th and 27th of May. I had a look today, there are spots available, so you can just join them and discuss a bunch of different topics with those people, which is quite cool. Bits and bobs. We actually planned to run a user group a couple of months ago. We couldn't in the end because we couldn't find speakers. So here's the call for speakers to all of you. You don't need to have this huge $1 million project that you run in your company and 5,000 people have access to those Tableau dashboards. It would be really cool to see what you're working on, what sort of problems you have, how did you solve them, and that might be as short as 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't need to be a flash big presentation, something like, oh, I ran into this problem and this is how I solved it, because I'm sure a lot of people here would benefit from these sort of talks as well. Take that out to your companies. If you find somebody who has something to talk about or would like to talk about, we are happy to support them, help them to sort of figure out the topic, help them present and test things if they want to. And similarly, if you can host, we're here at the grid, that's nice, but if you and your company can host, that would be great. If you can chip in for the snacks and drinks, that's great as well. If you can't, that's fine as well. We'll find a way around that, so that's not a problem. If your company is looking for Tableau resources, or if you are looking for a new place to work at, well, either come up now and tell everybody, or get in touch with Tabata and me. We usually hear from different people that they look for either somebody to hire or look for new roles, so we might be able to put you in touch. Oh yeah, and forget the last point, I didn't change that. So the next SAC maybe end of June, early July, maybe earlier if one of you can host or is happy to speak. And lastly, thanks to James and Nassim for talking. Thanks to those people, we can run these events. Thanks to the grid for hosting us here, and thanks to Vanti for chipping in with the pizza and keeping us all fed. With that, thanks to all of